and I'm an accredited mediator, and I'm also an affiliate trainer for CiC. Okay, so recording has started, so welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to consider conflict conversations, difficult conversations. As a mediator, I've experienced quite a lot of people having a row. Yes. Oh, excuse me. My phone decides to speak to me for no good reason. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of situations, and I'll hopefully touch on some of those. But it would be good for you to share some of the elements that perhaps interest you about conflict. Conflict is a very interesting subject, I think. There's a lot going on in any conflict, and whilst we may be aware of some of it, hopefully by attending something like this, you'll get a sense of, kind of the wider span of conflict. So what we will do, I hope, at the end is that when we have a Q&A session at the end, we can stop the recording and you can ask some more questions that perhaps you don't want to share with too many other people. All right, so we've got we're going into hopefully the second slide. Yep. So is this what conflict means? Do any of these images ring true for you? We've not included the one where someone runs off to hide in the broom cupboard. About 15% of us apparently do that. We just want to protect ourselves. We may find conflict extremely uncomfortable. Other people, they quite like conflict. They quite, it enlivens them. So we all have different responses or ways of doing conflict. And conflict is there all the time. Potentially it's sort of simmering away. Yeah. It's part of life. Where there are differences between people, there's conflict. Change brings conflict. And also some people just like to get passionate about things. Now, is there such a thing as good conflict? Okay, so I picked this slide earlier on today. An hour ago, these people were divided at loggerheads, and the creative process sometimes requires that differences be aired. Something positive can come out of different opinions being aired, being spoken about. Productive skirmishes, you could call them. Yeah, respectfully done, they can bring benefits to the team, but it takes skill and an ability to park the ego and to listen to the other party, even if you don't agree with them. And here we see them all intently looking over whatever it might be, sales figures or something. Okay. So is there such a thing as a good conflict? There's certainly toxic conflict, and we know that when we come across it. But sometimes conflict can be creative. And I'm just wondering if there are things which common responses for conflict. Yeah. My chat function has just disappeared, unfortunately. So I'm wondering if perhaps, Sarah, you could come off mute and just let me know what people write. I'm wondering if people can put into the chat function, what are the most common reasons for conflict? There could be lots of reasons. I'll just let you think about that for a moment. What might those reasons be?
So we've got one, George, which is opposing ideas, miscommunication and stress.
Yes, all very valid. Yeah.
Just purely difference of opinion as well. Obviously time pressures, and then high stress levels from one or both parties, and then when situations become personalised.
Yes. Yes, it's no longer just about ideas or ways of doing things. It becomes about, you know, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to prove to you why you're wrong. That sort of thing. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Sarah. Yeah.
And there's another one that's just come, which is a control of a situation.
Yes. Who is in control? Often that's something which we like to think that we're in control of some situations, or that someone else should be in control, and then they put us in control, and we're going, oh, why is that happening? Yeah, control is a big stumbling block, really, which makes us stumble into conflict. Okay, let's see what they put on the slide, because these slides were prepared by CiC, and I've altered some of them, but let's see what they have for us. Okay, we've mentioned that's absolutely spot on, and a lot of reasons why there is conflict is because of communications problems, people not understanding what's being said, or I wouldn't have put it like that, or that sort of thing, yeah. Or not getting the whole picture, or not hearing what's being said. Misinterpretation, another big one. Yeah, or just someone just being nasty, yeah, because they're stressed often. Yeah, they're not polite for whatever reason, because they're stressed, trying to get something done very quickly. Unfair treatment. You may be unfairly treated by students. The environment could be very difficult to work in. Something around boundaries. Perhaps you're not being allowed to do certain things which you would have liked to do. And of course, it's changed all the time. We've been through 2 years of that, haven't we? And still trying to make sense of it all. And it could be that someone's been off on sick leave, or their attendance has been poor, or there are issues about capability. So formal processes come into play. Disciplinary processes, or first stage, second stage, third stage, whatever it is that what is in your policies, or perhaps some sort of someone fires off a grievance against someone. Could be about management. Could be about micromanagement, where someone doesn't trust the people that are working for them in their team, so they're always hovering around. I've heard that many times in mediation, where someone has said, look, just get off my back. I know how to do the job. That's what what I've been hired to do. But why are you always trying to be there when I'm writing something, or making me send it to you first? Okay, overload, and particularly where there's been no training in the new systems and so on. And another big one around roles and duties. I did a mediation in an NHS trust, and there were it was a very large department of physiotherapists. 2 people were put in charge of the physiotherapy department, both at the same level, and they didn't have a direct, they didn't report to someone directly. So what happened was that they really fought it amongst themselves. The person who was very much more senior to them, who there should have been a level in between, just wasn't really there for them, and so they used to slug it out. So I'm very unfortunate. But it could be about things are unfair. Okay, so I think you've captured an awful lot of what have you say, difference of opinion. Yeah, it can be personalized. Yeah, there could be all sorts of reasons. Yeah, different personalities, professional jealousy, values clashes. Yeah, I like to do things this way, and you want to do it that way. Remember Gulliver's Travels? Yeah, two groups of people went to war over which way to crack an egg. Okay, so brilliant. Well done for putting in common reasons. I'm sure we've all experienced them in one way or another. And how do you manage it? Yeah. Now have a look at the if you look at the screen, at the slide there, maybe one of those will resonate with you, or maybe you hover from one to the other. There may be a fifth one. You might say that you take conflict in your stride. My wife is the youngest of a large family, and believe me, she's very comfortable with conflict, as is her cousin, who jointly heads up a trade union. And perhaps it's something about large families, perhaps. This slide could read, what is your conflict style? It's useful to know your own style or propensity, and also that there are other styles. And I come from a small family. My parents were always rowing. They stayed together, but boy, could they row. And this may have led me to feeling uncomfortable around conflict and adopting the role of peacemaker. And I used to avoid conflict, but I've taught myself to engage in it. And now I quite like it. I find it, it's quite creative in its own way. But if you'd said that to me 20 years ago, I think I would have been avoidant, number 2, or number 3. Now, given that we all have our own conflict default reaction, you're more likely to do, you're more likely to go towards conflict or away from conflict. You know where you are on that sort of continuum. And what are some of the more granular effects of conflict on you? This can vary depending on circumstances. Now, if you could use the chat function, please, to share the effects that conflict has had on you. It might be your sleep, your appetite, or how you view the effects on other people. What have you seen other people? What have been the effects that you've seen of conflict on others? If you again could use the chat function, please, and I'd be grateful, Sarah, if you could help with reading out what the response would be.
Absolutely. Lucy's going to take over from me shortly, just so you know. Just for this one though, we've got some great ones coming in. Got anxiety, massive over-analysing, feeling less confident, stress, lack of sleep, lack of appetite, and destroying confidence. And there's some more typing happening, so I'll let you know what gets put in.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah, I like that over-analysis. That's very, very true. Yeah, what do they mean by that? When they send me that email, what do they mean by that? What are they trying to ensnare me in?
Yeah, then the fear of meeting that person in the workplace.
Yeah.
And then can lead to results.
Yeah, there might be some benefit to come out of it, but often in our experience of conflict it is largely negative. Yeah, stress making. Yeah, and yeah, we don't sleep so well. There's an author called Clive Lewis, who I'll probably mention again, but he's a major, I think, on a MBE or something for his work with workplace conflict. Yeah, OBE. Yeah, well done, mate. 2011. He spoke about a mediation that he did. These people had been at loggerheads for 6 months or more, and when they resolved matters, one of them said, "Oh, actually, I need to tell you, I'm able to sleep again." Any other matter? Any other things have been mentioned?
There are a couple more people typing.
Okay.
Can cause separation among groups, side picking, and tough working environments.
Very valid, aren't they? Yes, side picking and separation. Gosh, those two cluster together. Yeah.
And then there's the physical symptoms that can be caused: dizziness, nausea, fatigue, loss of weight or weight gain as a result of these things. And the physical reactions again has been included in another chat.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it can affect us in many ways. Let's see what the slide has to say. But thank you for that. You can stop typing. All extremely valid points. Some of you may have experienced those, some of you may have seen those in other people. But yeah, we're kind of familiar with it with some of these things, aren't we? Yeah. It affects the home as well. Yeah. Sometimes what they say, that if you've been in, if there's been a conflict at work, you come back and the way that you deal with your family or the people that are close to you can affect their mental health. Certainly a lack of focus because you're worried, you're distracted by this other stuff. There's what they call a lack of bandwidth. You can't just get on with your work because you're wondering about this other stuff. It's there, sort of on your shoulders. Morale can be affected, and you might be planning ways to retaliate or to undermine the other person. That kind of, that could be quite active process, or it could be a sort of passive aggressive. I'll get them. I'll work out a way of doing it. And culturally, a lot of us are, quite good at doing passive aggressive. Lack of motivation and confidence being lowered. As we've said in the chat function, our well-being is affected. It could be including our mental health. And not being able to switch off because we wake up with this stuff at 3 in the morning, going bang, bang, bang. It's there. And some of us might start to accept this as normal, which of course then takes its toll again, leading to obvious signs like could be sickness, sadness. At the extremes, it could be people resigning from their work and then having psychological problems as well. Okay. So what does it look like? What might you see as conflict escalates? What might you see? People rolling their eyes, turning away from one another, squaring up to one another? What might you hear? Raised voices, shouting, swearing? Or maybe it's that awful silence before all hell breaks loose. Or a prolonged, stifled silence, which makes you feel uncomfortable to be in the same room. What might you feel? Tense, edgy, saddened? Some people, as I said, are excited by it. Conflict. Oh, fight. Yeah. Frustrated, perhaps, or angry. How can this be going on? Why are they allowing this to happen? What are these people up to? Why doesn't someone step in and do something about it? It's obvious what's going on. That conversation with yourself and with others, and taking sides, as you say. Now, I would like you to, again, use the chat function to think of a time when you handled a conflict well. I just want you to look at the first of those questions. What did you notice that helped you in that situation? What was it that helped you? I don't really want you to look at the second question. So dealing with the first question only. Positive stuff only. What did you notice that helped you when you handled a conflict well? It could be, it doesn't have to be at work. It could be, a family thing, or between friends, or it might have been in the street. So again, if you could use the chat function.
Hi Sarah, George, I'll do these from now on because Sarah, I know you've got to go.
Right, Lucy.
Sorry George, switching
that's
over.
Okay, no, that's good. And over. See you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
I've got having someone with me. I put that. Just having a witness, as it were, to look me side eye and keep me calm. We've also got staying calm, at least outwardly, and keeping cool and calm. And I suppose it's how we manage to keep calm, really, and remembering that.
Yeah.
We've got preventing issues from snowballing, dealing with the issue whilst it's small rather than letting it become something bigger.
Yes.
It's more people typing.
Nipping things in the bud.
Yeah, and changing body language. Some people, I know we've got here, Tracy said about sitting down. Other people walk as they talk.
Yep.
So they're both side by side.
Yep. That's great. That's really good. Yeah, and then you could, the pace of the walking as well. There's another element to it. Slowly or briskly. Yeah. Do they keep up with you when you walk along, or are you keeping up with them? Can you move? Can you allow them to lead? Then you lead, and do they follow? There's all of those elements about it. Yeah. It's very good to walk side by side. You're not squaring up to each other or looking at each other eye to eye. Some people do, some people like to talk that way.
And we've also got here, set realistic expectations and then keep to them.
Yeah, remembering what they are, making a note, reminding yourself and keeping to them. Yeah, having some sort of boundaries around it. That's great. Thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So that's empowering. When we bring that to mind, when we remember those things, those things help us where we get into a more positive space if we are confronted with a new conflict situation. Yeah. So bring that, making that safe space in your mind, if you can do that, if you can create this space that you reflect on. Wow, that went well. That helps to empower you when you are faced with a complex situation. Being present in the here and now as well, and keeping an eye on your breathing and so on.
Hi George, we've got a last minute one in as well,
Sure.
Which is a good one, about not promising things knowing you can't keep them.
Yes.
So again, it goes with that realistic expectations.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, because that's just storing up more trouble for later. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm just making a note of these. These are great. Right, so, okay, where are we? So in managing conflict here, I'll just let you read the table here. I've got the green zone, the amber zone, the red zone. And we want to stay in the green. But it's worth looking at the other two zones. So everything in the amber and red zones would not have helped you in dealing with a conflict where you were able to be, where it was a positive experience. The conflict was positive, but you were able to manage it well. In the green zone, we can add listening to understand, perhaps. Often we listen to find points that we can disagree with. And listening to understand is a different type of listening. Some people call it empathic listening. And how to feel positive about the exchange, even though we might be the butt of it. Yeah, they might be having a go at us. Also, what's missing in the amber and the red is when things get personal. Someone says, someone might say to you, you missed the deadline. What's wrong with you? Now, instead of, they could have said, why did you not make the deadline? That's less personal. What's wrong with you? As if you're somehow defective. Yeah. What are the facts rather than, why are you so defective? We know this. We've said this already. Conflict greatly increases stress. And let's have a look at toxic reactions during and post-conflict. Just a quick slide on that. A lot of people go into this one, aggression or fight. Now, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm going to prove why. You need to know why you're wrong. Some people have, as I've already mentioned, they could be avoidant. They could flee or postpone, another one, or delegate. They don't want to go to the meeting with that particularly difficult parent. They'd much rather send you. Or can you just go and see Mrs. So-and-so? Or little Jimmy's parent. And then there's accommodation and compromise, which on the surface could appear like that, but it could be followed by passive aggressive behaviour. So someone could be a seemingly, remember these are toxic reactions. Seemingly okay with things. Yeah, I'll do that for you, don't worry. But then they'll make it, they'll put in some sort of spanner into the works. And you won't know about that, or you'll suspect it, but you can't prove it. Going to go briefly into the drama triangle. This might be familiar to some of you. Now, one thing to bear this one in mind. It's worth being reminded of it. And we've got three characters involved. Typically, the victim says something like, poor me. The persecutor may say something like, it's all your fault. And the rescuer says to the victim, usually, I'll help you. Now, it may look like the rescuer is coming from a good place, but what might the rescuer be assuming about the victim, the person in the victim role? Well, you need fixing. I've got the power to fix you. The result may be to reinforce the victim's state. And if things backfire, some victims turn on their turn it round, and they become persecutor of the rescuer. So the rescuer becomes the new victim in a new configuration. Now, I'm just wondering if you could use the chat function. We'll take a moment over this. How might you step out of or stay out of the drama triangle? You might find yourself caught in one of these, and they do happen because these things are unconscious and reactive. We find ourselves going into these things. As someone said, you take sides, or that can happen, but also we can find ourselves in one of these drama triangles. How do you stay out of this? Again, the chat function would be a useful way of doing it.
Oh, George, we have got some people typing and just waiting.
Okay, no worries.
Remaining objective, stepping away from the immediate situation before you try and resolve anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, this is the hard one, isn't it, where you've got to remain neutral?
Oh, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, impartiality we've got there.
Yes, that's a tough one. Yeah.
And I find that's the hardest thing because you've become emotional, that's why it's become a conflict usually. And so to step out of that emotion is really, or even not to go into it, to go in prepared. Because as you said before, it's quite reactive. So
yeah.
And there it says unconsciously react, and it's how to stop.
Yeah. And victim and persecutor may be looking at, it's your fault, or no, it's your fault. Why did you hit him? Because he called me a name. Or why did he call you a name? That's the rescuers coming in and trying to sort things out. The rescuer, in a way, is, often people see the mediator as a rescuer in some way or other, and we have to be impartial. Usually the victim is saying, this person, it could be a colleague, it could be their boss, it could be, say, someone in another team, is making their life, terrible. The persecutor knows how to push the buttons of the victim, and often the rescuer, stroke mediator, stroke manager, or another colleague is brought into play. And you're right, staying objective, because they will be pushing, they'll be trying to get you on side. They'll be using everything they can to get you on their side, and that's an unconscious process, and that's natural. Of course they will. They see it from my point of view. How would you like it if? They're using all those other things. So trying to step away from that situation, absolutely. Pausing. Very good.
We've got another interesting point here, because it's not quite the rescuer, but the idea that if you're in control, you can pass it on to somebody else to help and assist you.
Mm-hmm.
But if that person's your choice, then they're not a rescuer, as in they're not offering to rescue, I suppose. You are gaining support. So passing it on, if you can't step out of that
triangle,
impartiality, pass it to someone who can.
Yes, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah. So if two members of in your team, and you're their line manager, then is it possible to then step out of that? Two students, fighting amongst themselves. Is there another party? You know, you're their teacher, you're their immediate teacher. Is there someone else that can be brought in that somehow steps out of this drama triangle and has got no reason to side with either, or won't? You know, they'll try their best, but they probably won't be able to make that person, the new rescuer, if you like, side with either party, who will remain neutral, impartial. Yeah.
Just a question, George, because in teaching, I don't know, and with students, I don't know if anyone else finds this, because of the parent-child transactional analysis.
Yes.
What can happen in a conflict between adults and children in schools quite often is that victim persecutor becomes very blurry, that the teacher or the staff member can feel like a victim, and the student can be the persecutor, and vice versa, because both feel that they're in the right.
Absolutely.
And at that point, that's probably the best point. Would you agree to get not a rescuer, not someone coming in saying I'll sort it, but actually you saying stop, this needs to be dealt with at another time?
Exactly. Another party. Yes, absolutely. Who is not in the role of rescuer, trying to rescue the victim, but trying to listen to both sets of stories, if you like, and reflecting those back to those people. And what did you hear? When the persecutor says that the reason why they did that was because you ... What did you hear them say? So you're supposing. So yes, absolutely. What happens is that this is a dynamic process. People are not always stuck. As I mentioned before, the victim can become the persecutor of the rescuer if things get unstuck. And similarly, these roles can kind of subtly move around. So don't assume that they are written in stone. They're not. It's just as well to know what is going on, that this thing exists. And absolutely, the parent, adult, child model, we did have that as a slide, but there is that. There is all of that there, and you're trying to stay an adult. That's what it is, isn't it? Because persecutor could be like, angry parent. Victim could be like naughty child, or little child. Oh, poor me, little child. And rescuer is trying to come in as adult, or as some sort of super parent, and trying to knock them into shape in some way. That's not. Everyone's trying to stay an adult here if they can, and that way you move away from the drama triangle. But how you do that, I think is a cue for our next slide. Really, it's that's a drama triangle. You need confidence to be able to do that. So knowing that this model exists helps you to think, okay, what's going on here? Do I need to run this past someone else? Am I stepping into the role of rescuer in some way, or am I a victim, and and I'm asking someone else to become my rescuer, or what's going on, or am I being labelled as persecutor? And you need time as well, time and space. It's about safety and boundaries. You're meeting with an aggrieved person. You tell them you've got 30 minutes for the meeting, and they've got 90 minutes worth of material, a stack of emails that they need to go through line by line. But you have to tell them 30 minutes. That's the start of a process. You say, right, let's start the process with 30 minutes anyway, and arrange a follow-on if necessary. And also make sure that you can take a few minutes before the meeting to plan beforehand. And we've also got skills, familiarity with policies around conflict and disagreement, your organisational policies, and about confidentiality. And skills to ensure that you have backup. Who to go to for confidential advice, a sounding board. What other resources can you employ? Those are all skills, knowledge. Are there only formal processes, or are there some informal processes, like, for example, some form of mediation that's available to call on? Is there a budget for that sort of thing? Who can arrange that? How would that work? It can be done online. So all of these elements are, as it says here, considerations for effective conversations. There's a way of bringing it away from some sort of toxic conflict to some sort of creative conflict, if one can call it that. And then these elements of respect and civility. Usually we succeed in keeping interactions respectful and civil. We've already said that no workplace is conflict free. Yeah, it might be. It says here, stakeholders, customers, suppliers, parents, whatever it might be, students. And there may also be inter-team or intra-team conflict. Yeah, so between teams or within the team. And as you already said, people take sides. And we know that green, you know, keeping in the green as opposed to amber or the red, what keeps us there? We're trying to manage conflict and disagreements in a respectful manner, and that can be difficult. It can be very, you know, there's everything to knock you off course. You know, and if you've had some sleepless nights, or you know, you've been affected in other ways by conflict, then it's difficult to keep a level head. Who can you talk to about it? How can you invest in your own skills about this, and also knowing about the organizational support that's available? Yeah, and maybe it's stuff outside of your organization as well, which we'll deal with one of the last slides here in the deck. And here's some guidelines. Assessing the risk in advance. Trying to work out who you're dealing with. And if we can reflect back in our own words what they've said, they feel heard. But try not to interrupt them, obviously. These are things you already know. I'll just return, you know, it's just a list of things, isn't it? Using emotional intelligence, and you could call it somatic intelligence. Yeah, I mean, am I feeling particularly tense, and acknowledging the fact I'm feeling tense with this person? Yeah, where am I feeling tension in my body? Right now, am I forming a fist? Am I shoulders up near my, you know, up above my ears? Yeah, because I'm so tense. Yeah, so that's your own body intelligence as well. What's that telling you? Yeah, how am I tensing myself, bracing myself for something here? Why? I'm trying to look towards contribution. Yeah, what did they do? You know, if you're dealing with people that are in dispute, you know, or what did they do? What's their contribution towards that? Rather than blaming them or saying one is right and one is wrong. Yeah. People bring things into a conflict, a particular viewpoint. What is that viewpoint? And trying to keep that. That's a skill, isn't it? Neutral language, tone of voice, respect and patience, even though every fibre of your being is saying, I just want to shout at this person, but being professional with it. And it goes beyond professionalism, isn't it? It's like, is that respect for the other person, even though they're being disrespectful to you. I worked in the field of mental health for about 15 years, and some people I'd do one-to-ones with people, and some of them would just rant at me for about an hour. And after that, they'd say, oh, I feel much better for that. I felt really angry when I came in here. I feel so much better. I had to go and discharge that somewhere. So we had debriefings at the end where you know, we were all working with people with mental health challenges, quite serious ones in some cases. But you know, we would talk about it. We put it into perspective. Yeah, but having patience and respect for the people that we were working with, and for one another. You know, being able to be there for one another, to support one another as staff. And signposting. Quick one on emotional intelligence. Yeah, emotions are viral. You know, the person's emotions and energy state will have some effect on you, and vice versa. Maybe they are upset and they want to make you upset. That's what the person, as I mentioned, that, you know, that hour with that person, as I was working with them one-to-one, you know, they wanted to make me upset. But you're calm. If I was calm, how can you pass some of that onto them? Do I initially match their energy and then step it down, hoping that they follow suit? Yeah. Or do I come in calm from the beginning, and hopefully they join me in that calm space? Yeah. Anyway, there are elements of emotional intelligence here. You know, empathy being one of them. Yeah. Self-awareness, you know, this is having an effect on me, this meeting with this person, but I'm not going to shout at them, but I am acknowledging the fact that they're having an effect on me. I wonder what I can do. You know, what have I got within my tool bag to bring this forward? And then faced with this, how do we retain resilience? How do we manage our emotions? Yeah, it's okay to call time out. Yeah, people get overwhelmed. Yeah. What, just again, using the chat function, how do we handle this? You know, the other person's having a go at you, steam coming out of their ears. If you've ever had this experience, don't have to go into the detail, but what did you do? And what should one avoid? And again, wait for some comments in the chat function. How do we diffuse this?
So we've got one here about, which relates to the previous points we were making about tell them, basically time out, tell them now's not the time, walk away, rearrange your time to meet.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they may not like that, but I think that's usually the best thing, because changing state, yeah, is the best thing to do in this situation. Yeah, you feel, particularly if you're feeling that they're going to have a go at you, you know, hit you or something, or you know, there's some possibility of harm, either verbally or, you know, physically, then absolutely time out. Yeah, and don't ask questions. Questions put pressure on them. Yeah, you could summarize what you've heard, even if you don't agree with it, and that takes some of the pressure off. Yeah, and you can then steer the conversation into, you know, maybe I've you know, heard what you said. These are the points. We need, you know, I want to go away and think about that, and I agree to, you know, we'll meet again, or let's make a time to meet again. But yeah, you need to step out of this situation, definitely. Yeah. Okay, let's see what CiC have put. So thank you for that. In anger diffusion, they're saying listen, agree, and pause. I'll let you read the slide. And with this point, agree, right? Yes, and you may not agree with what they're saying entirely, but there might be one element of the complaint that you can agree with. Yes, and right. And if you're wanting to counter their argument, don't use yes, but. Yes, and it's the 5th time that you have not delivered something that you said you would, rather than yes, but. And pausing, that's again, as a skill. The time seems to do strange things in where there's anger. It can seem like an eternity, just a few seconds. But trying to pause, trying to just stay there, but also allowing time, because they're having a conversation with themselves as well as you. And allowing thinking time, because when we are so upset, we can't really access our thinking time, can we? I think we might be able to, but I think you're right to say let's call it a day. But if you can't, then pausing can allow some thinking time. And it may put more pressure on them, though. Yes.
Sorry, we've got another really lovely comment about how showing understanding and empathy, understanding that they, you know, why they might be upset, etc. But also that silence isn't always a bad thing. Yes. And that fits in perfectly with this about just pausing and not responding immediately. Yeah.
So they can hear themselves. It echoes back to them what they've just said. Yeah. And how your demeanor is when in that process as well, you know, open-mouthed or At least outwardly calm would be good. Or you might be scowling or angry, but if one can just slightly change one's demeanour to allow some calmness in. Again, that's skillful, and the more of these you do, the more the better you get at it, I guess. Okay, and then we've got these things: Roblox and Impasse. During challenging conversations, we sometimes reach a roadblock or an impasse. People get obsessed with the truth. It's their truth, perhaps. This is what really happened, and as we know, the truth takes many forms. It's like spokes coming out of a hub. One person's truth is another person's partial truth. People can be accused of lying or being unhelpful. So again, one can use these skills to check their understanding of the situation. Explain more why you say that. Acknowledging their feelings. What do they want exactly? What can you and can't you do? Again, I think there's a good point earlier on. Not promising things you cannot keep to. Realistic expectations. Managing their expectations of what can be done. And again, summarizing. When you summarize, what happens is, and you reflect back, you can then steer the conversation in a particular direction, right? So you take back control when you're summarizing. You can then move it somewhere else. If you're asking questions of them all the time, then they have the power. You're listening, obviously, and reflecting back. Again, it's being able to summarize it and then reframe what they've said, perhaps. For example, Alice says about John is he's my boss, and he never ever lets me take any initiative. Okay, he's useless. He never lets me have any initiative at all. I've never had to make a decision. Okay, so right, Alice. So what you're saying is you'd like John to allow you to make more decisions. How would that work? Okay, just reframing. Helping you to help others in conflict. We've mentioned some of these points already. Empathic listening is a skill. Not interrupting them, showing you're listening, reflecting back. Invite their ideas. Might not be possible, but at least they said it. And look out for signs of overwhelm, and take time out if necessary. Even a 5-minute break can get us out of this idea of chimp brain, monkey brain, that it's fight or flight, and the rational bit switches off when we're in that mode, and we can then go back into some sort of more rational element of our brain. Allowing reset. And we've mentioned that some of these things already in the chat. I'll just go through these points for the listening checklist. The pronouns that we use. When you do that, I find that I can't think straight. Do you think we could find another way, of working together? And it's, using the I statements is very part of assertiveness, part of us, making assertive statements. And it's very important to highlight commonalities. Again, another example where there was a dispute between management and trade unions, and it was getting very, 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 very heated, very bad. And the author, there was a mediator, sat down with the parties, the two people, trade unionist and the CEO, whatever it might be, and said, tell us a bit about yourself, about your background. They were sort of trying to get some commonality, both from big families. Okay, one of them was the firstborn, and the other one was the baby of the family, the last born. So they both had their positions in their own family groups. In Ted's family, Ted was the oldest. In Bill's family, Bill was the youngest, but they both had large families. And within that, you know, the way that they viewed their family makeup and how they got attention and so on. So highlighting the commonalities, that broke the ice. That means they started to kind of appreciate each other more, and they, you know, got to resolution. And checking pros is really important within the conversation. Yeah, it's like that, you know, making those steps into the slope. And this idea of progress from positions to needs. Positions is where people dig in. People say, right, this is what I want, and this is what I want from you, and this is when I want it by, and so on. And then when that's challenged, they'll dig in even further. And why do you need it is more to do with needs. What does it do for you? Why do you need this? Yeah, there's the example that all mediators are taught is the mother who comes in on these two rowing children, two rowing daughters. They're fighting over an orange, and it's not fair. You know, I want the orange. No, I want the orange. So they're establishing their positions, and the mother says, "Well, what do you need the oranges for?" And one of them says that she wants to eat the orange, and the other one is saying she needs the orange to bake a cake. Okay, so which bit of the orange do you need to bake the cake? Oh, it's the rind, you know, the outer bit, the zest. I need the zest for my cake. Fine, one of them can eat the orange, the other one can have the zest. Sorted. Their needs are being met, but they were arguing from the positions, and they weren't getting anywhere. So, what are the needs, and can one move from that from position to needs? Is that possible? You'll get the slides. I won't go into each one of these phrases. They're quite useful, but again, you can read it in your own time. Diffusing phrases. I'm wanting to get into the Q&A if I can. We've got one or two slides left to go. Communicating your concerns. Supposing you're asking for your needs to be met. Yeah, it's the hardest part for many people. Yeah, it might be, I don't know, some more responsibility, a pay rise, or less responsibility, or change in your working circumstances. Who do you need to speak to? What do you want to say? No, I can't do this anymore at this level, whatever. What response are you looking for? And what response do you fear? It's a little checklist, really, isn't it? And then you look at that. Now, does it lead to disrespect, or can they understand what your needs are? But for a lot of us, we struggle asking for help for whatever reason, and so people never really know what we're thinking, what we want, what we'd like. Yeah, or if there's any sort of way of meeting our requests. And then final few slides, support for you. I'll let you read the slide. Yeah, peer support, very powerful. Yeah. You'll have our in-house wellbeing support, wellbeing services, perhaps an EAP, which allows, you know, it's a confidential service, no one else gets to know, mental health support, access to counselling, as well as practical support and advice around things, you know, home life and so on, legal matters, that sort of thing. And then anything else, well, a book called Toxic, and that's written by Clive Lewis, and it's published by Bloomsbury. I recommend that. It's a guide, as it says here, to rebuilding respect and tolerance in a hostile workplace. Not all of that will apply, but there are some good hints and tips in there. It's probably out in paperback by now. I got the first edition. So don't try and do it alone. Ask for help. I think that's the main thing with this slide. If there's one thing to take away from today, is don't try and do it alone. Ask for help, and there's the various bits of support for you. There'll be feedback, so we'd be grateful for any feedback you can give, and you can scan the QR code using your phone. And it's now time to Q&A. I don't whether you could stop the recording, that would be great. You can then look at what's available to us.